everyone, my name is Max and today I am here with my worst books of 2020. So unlike my best books of 2020, this is not going to be in any particular order. Most of these have been real books I've really not enjoyed. I do have the more disappointed closer to the bottom, which I will differentiate, but most of these, they all brought out the same level of like anger and annoyance in me. So honestly, there are definitely some more disappointing like authors. Some of these are like new authors where this is the first book I've read by them, but a lot of them are authors that I have enjoyed and are loyal to, so the fact that they just were not good was a big bummer. So the first book I'm going to be talking about is Meet Cute Club by Jack Harbin. This was about these two guys who, one was the leader of a book club called the Meet Cute Club where they read romance, and one guy worked at a bookstore and like kind of slammed romances, but then joins the book club and the book club's failing, and so he helps them bring more people in, and the guys just had no chemistry, literally none. Like, it was so bland and they just didn't work out, and there was no like, I thought this was gonna be kind of angsty, hate to love, slow burn. No, it really wasn't. And so I thought the one guy was a jerk, and then all of a sudden they're like making out and together, and then the ending was so just like, you know, rom-coms and romances, you do have to suspend your disbelief, but this was like a whole other level where it was just like absurd. Like, that would never happen, and it just was a big disappointment because I feel like it was very hyped and I was super excited to read it. Next book I'm going to talk about is Terraformer by Colleen Houck. This was one where I loved the Tiger's Curse series by Colleen Houck. She used to consider her one of my favorite authors, but after the Tiger's Curse series, I haven't enjoyed one book by her, and this was definitely telling of that. This was like a bad fan fiction. Like, there was sex pollen. I feel like there was more that now I can't remember, and it was just so bland, and the stupid love triangle, and the end was whack, and it was just so weird. Like, the plot itself was interesting, and I kept reading it because I honestly wanted to see what happened, but like, the characters weren't good. Our main character was just stupid, and just like, I don't know, stuff was just, it was not good, and I just couldn't believe like that she had sex pollen in it. Like, what? I couldn't believe it when I was listening to the audiobook, and I was just like, what? I had to call my best friend. I was in the middle of a hike. I had to find self-service and call her and be like, sex pollen in a published novel? Like, who? Yeah, couldn't believe it, and this was definitely kind of the defining factor in me deciding not to pick up anything else by her. Another book is The Midnight Circus by Jane Yolen. If you saw my August reading vlogs, you will know that I hated this. This was a selection of short stories written by a very prolific author named Jane Yolen, and I hated every single one of them. Either it was like a crappy man was the main character, or a woman was the main character, but she was like, you know, one of the very big stereotypes of like mother slut, virgin, crone, or like women just not, they were just, I'm like, you are a woman writing in the 21st century and you wrote this and people like lauded her for it. It was awful, and I was just very bummed about it. Next book I'm going to talk about is 172 Hours on the Moon. This was whack. I read this, I think, back in like March, either February or March, and it was just not good. I remember seeing Poland Bananas Books and Catty-tastic like raving about this book, like, it's so scary and it was so good. I'm like, it was crap, and there was like one slightly scary moment. It was just not good. Nothing was explained. It was like too short, but also like too long, and it was just very boring, and then like the ending didn't even make sense, and it was just really used for like shock value, and it was just very weird. And I feel like when you're in the head of a main character, you can't use them for a plot twist that they know. Like, a plot twist happened in the end, and it was like she knew about it, and it was like the readers were surprised, and it was like, wait a second, we're in her head. It's literally, I'm pretty sure it was first person. Like, that doesn't work. If she hadn't known and it was a plot twist, like surprise for everyone, different story, but she knew. It was like a whole thing, and it was just very bad, and I just really didn't like it. Next book is one of the absolute most disappointing ones on this list, and probably the most, and that's Storm Dancer by Jay Kristoff. I really didn't like this. I remember after I read it and DNF'd it, I like read reviews and like it's very bad. Like he uses Japanese heritage and mythology, but he didn't do any research. He talked about how his research was like anime and reading like Wikipedia articles. And it was just not good. I mean, oh my god, the best part was like, so it's about our main character. It's in a like a steamboat fantasy. You're definitely using the wrong term, but I just can't remember what it is right now. And like she is in this airship and then she crashes and she finds this griffin that like this king wants and hired her to get, and they like make a connection. And like that part was like fine, even though it was like supposed to be like the griffin hated her, but then they like grew to like care for each other, and it happened in like 2 chapters. But then the thing that annoyed me the most was that he had like the nice guy trope, where this guy who was like fine throughout, he was like in love with our main character and he found out that she was into someone else and he was like, but I'm a nice guy, oh, friend zoned, and then he like screwed her over. I don't even know what happened because I DNF'd it at that point. I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. It was so boring and so poorly written. The characters sucked and the plot sucked, and then finding out that J. Kristoff didn't do like any real research was kind of the cherry on top. So even though this doesn't mean I'm not going to read anything by J. Kristoff in the future. I don't know. I feel like I love the Nevernight series. I love the Illuminae files, but like other books that I've read by him recently have been a bit lackluster. His Lifelike series, I liked the first one, but they kind of went downhill. Aurora Rising, I'm not really liking. And this was, I believe, like his first novel. Maybe not, but like I feel like it was one of his first. And so I can kind of forgive him that. But honestly, just very, very bad. All right, I'm gonna talk about a couple books by the same author, and again, very disappointing. And the first one is Season of Storms by Andrzej Sapkowski. This is kind of a prequel in the Witcher series, and I just don't know the point of it. I read it and I was like, okay, this did nothing for the plot. It did nothing. Like I thought maybe this was gonna be how like he met Jaskier or Dandelion. I was like, maybe that's what it's gonna be, or maybe it's gonna be like, maybe like the first season of The Witcher, we get more backstory than in the books. I was like, maybe this is that backstory. Maybe we'll see Yennefer's childhood. Maybe we'll see Geralt and Jaskier meeting. No, it was like just, yeah, Yennefer isn't in it, which I'm fine with. I don't like Yennefer. Ciri isn't in it. I think it basically takes place between the first book of short stories and the second, because he's met Yennefer, but she's not in it. And Jaskier's in it for like a little bit, but there's just like, didn't feel like any plot. And I just was very disappointed in it. And this is one of the reasons why I am no longer gonna read anything by Andrzej Sapkowski. The other reason is The Tower of Fools. It was so bad. It was so bad. It felt like a Three Stooges like man road trip thing where they're like, oh, whatever, where they did like really stupid crap and like kept like getting into hijinks and getting out of it. And it's like, oh, this is so kooky. And there was just no plot again. Like he tried to have a plot, but like it never really factored in. It was like 500 and something pages of nothing. And our couple of female characters are not good, like not good. They're just there as like sexual objects for the men. And it just was bad. It was bad. It was just, oh. The writing was bad. The characters were so unlikable. The plot was non-existent. It's called The Tower of Fools, and it's like no one can break out of The Tower of Fools. It took me like 70% of the book to finally figure out what the hell The Tower of Fools was. For a second, I was like, oh, he's found, the main character is found at the beginning having sex with a woman who's married. And first I was like, okay, he's gonna be caught and sent to the Tower of Fools. No, I was like, oh, okay, maybe she's sent to the Tower of Fools because back then women, you know, if they were slightly different, they were sent to like sanatoriums, and that's what this is. I was like, oh, okay, maybe she is. Oh no, I'm like, oh, maybe it's a metaphor. You know, maybe like the Tower of Fools is a metaphor. No, he goes there and in 5% of the book, from 70 to 75%, he gets out. And he goes there of his own free will, and I can't remember why, but literally 5% he gets out. I'm like, okay, so this whole thing about the Tower of Fools, impenetrable, you can never escape. He escapes in 5%, which is like 25 pages. It was awful. I like finished that and I was like, excuse me? Excuse me? That can't be it. But it was. And it was so bad and just so unfortunate. And I am done with Andrei Sapkowski. All right, the next book I'm going to be talking about is one that I read in October, and if you've followed me since then, you will have heard about it because it put me in quite the reading slump, and that's The Sword in the Stars by Amy Rose Capetta and Corey McCarthy. This is the sequel to One in Future, which I also didn't love, but like I was fine with it. This is an Arthurian legend retelling where Arthur is a female in like way in the future, and like the world is ruled by Amazon basically. And it just sucked. It was very bad. It was so boring. And the characters made such stupid decisions. And like there was like consequences from the ending of the first book. And like the ending of the first book, Guinevere, I was like, you are so stupid. She made a very stupid choice because she was lonely. And like now she has to deal with it. She literally tells Arthur, I can't remember her name right now. She was like, I shouldn't have done this. I'm like, well, it's way too late to back out now, girl. And like, it was just, and Guinevere and Arthur are like, she's a girl and I honestly just can't remember her name anymore. I blocked it out of my head. But it's like, Arthur is found by Merlin and is told like, listen, there is a curse. There is like, this happens again and again and again. And if you don't fall in love with Gwen, then it won't happen. She's like, oh, well, I'm gonna do that anyways. Like, oh, it'll bring the end of the world. Well, I don't really care because I'm in love with Gwen. It's like, okay, you were teenage lovers. Like, get over her and like find someone new. Like, I just can't, that's why I have such a hard time with like forbidden romances where it's like, really? You're gonna do all this because you're a teenager in love for the first time. Like, oh, gag. And that's exactly what this was. And it wasn't even really forbidden. It was just Merlin being like, dude, like the prophecy won't happen if you don't fall in love with her. So how about you don't? She was like, I'm gonna. And I was just like, you are a moron. And they all were. Merlin was like the only likable character. And I hated everyone else. No, some of the side characters were fine. But Gwen, Arthur, and Kay, hated all of them. And honestly, the second book had like, it was so all over the place. It was all over the place. It didn't have like a cohesive storyline. It was like, oh, here's someone, oh, here's someone, oh, and I was just like, what? And it turned out like the Lady of the Lake was the main bad guy in all this. I'm like, no, Mercer is the bad guy. But no, I was like, okay. Like, so this whole like consumerism moral that you might have been telling is actually not there because the main bad guy is a woman who has magic, who almost was persecuted for it and exiled and stuff. I was like, okay, sure. And from two gay women, or from two people in the LGBTQ plus community, I was very disappointed. All right, the last two books will come as, I'm sure, absolutely no surprise if you watched my August reading vlogs or my August wrap up. And the first one is Upon a Burning Throne by Ashok K. Banker. I wanted to love this. I mean, the cover is gorgeous and Mahabharata retelling is like all I've ever wanted. And I thought this was gonna be so great and it just was so not. It was so boring. It's like 670 pages of nothing. It was just so bland. And I realized this is basically a prequel for the Mahabharata because the Mahabharata follows like these main characters' children. And so that makes me more interested to continue the series, but I was just very disappointed. It's like, so what this is about is like these two siblings are like the world is trying to decide who's going to become king, and they put them through this fire trial, which if you win, that means you're going to rule, and if you lose, you die. And so these two boys both win, but so does a demon princess. And I was like, yes, give me this demon princess. She wasn't in it at all. Her dad had like or her grandfather had 2-chapter point of views, and like that was it. And then like I feel like, you know, I blocked like most of it out of my memory. I don't even remember now, but like I feel like the two boys made some really stupid calls and were just like, I don't even know, but like everyone sucked and there was like no one likable, and it was just bad. It was just bad and very boring and just such a disappointment. And then the last book I'm going to talk about is probably the worst book that I read in 2020, and that is Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. It was so bad. I hate Tao, the main character. I hate him with a burning passion. He just, through 500 and something pages, he screwed over every single person he knew. It's like a revenge tale for the people who killed his dad, but the people killed his dad because of something he did. I'm like, dude, you brought this on yourself. Like, he was like yelling at like the crown prince. Like, what did you think was gonna happen? And then he just screws over every single person who tries to help him throughout this whole book. And I hate him so much. And then Reagan from Prue's Project brought up a really good point where it's like, our main character is like in a war, like he's part of the army, and they are fighting the native people of this country. And she was like, I just wanted, you know, something where they are like, oh, we're actually the bad guys, because they are. And it's like, and of course he's not self-aware enough to realize that. Someone literally calls him out and they're like, wow, you haven't changed at all through this, have you? I'm like, you know, Evan Winter, it's interesting that you bring that up, seeing as you're the author and should have given him some semblance of character development, but he has none and he sucks. And I rage read the last like 400 pages because the first 100 were like, no, not even, like the first 50 pages were fine. And then like as soon as his dad dies, I was like, you're an idiot and I hate him now. And like, I thought maybe it's because I don't like unlikable characters or whatever it is. But then I was trying to remember one book where someone was like, I don't like the main character because she is like unlikable. And I was like, no, I liked her. So I think it's just, I just hate Tao so much. I hate him so much. I literally can't stand the man. And it just makes me hate the book. And that's a bummer because I'm interested in the plot. I'm interested in the side characters. I just wish he was better. Or I mean, even if he's super unlikable in the beginning, to have some character development by the end. But he doesn't, and I hate him for it. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Let me know down below if you agree with anything or if any of these books were your favorite of the year. And I'll see you soon with another video. Bye.